The new consoles are upon us, Leigh, and
Indeed.
you've picked yourself up an Xbox One. Excuse me, an Xbox Series X. You'll have to excuse me because the naming is dumb, but nonetheless, that's what it's called, an Xbox Series X. And you've been poking around with it for since I mean you got it pretty much on launch day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
can't
right on the thing, yeah.
it arrived on launch day. Um, so I guess the story here, specifically with the Xbox this time around, is that there isn't a whole lot of necessarily new games to play, but a lot of improvements to old games. So you went from an Xbox One X to an Xbox Series X.
Uh-huh, I did indeed.
Okay. And so what's the big improvement here besides it being super mega super fast?
Um, the difference is it's also mega super fast, just not within the games. Um, there's lots of kind of instant ons that I didn't think going in would bother me so much. So it starts up instantly. So it moves around the UI instantly. It accesses stuff, games instantly. Big whoop. But I'm surprised how much of a kind of, and I understand it's the same on the opposition console as well.
Mm-hmm.
Which is everything's much sharper, faster to get into, faster to get out of, and it does kind of make it a nice free flowing experience to just shift around everything, which kind of it just makes everything flow nicer
Mm-hmm.
within itself, and it's it's something I didn't think would bother me that much, but I'm enjoying the
Mm-hmm.
swiftness of getting around.
Yeah, there was a time there in the lifespan of the Xbox One that user interface was not super fast. It would take a
No.
long time to load up your games library, and
Mm.
you'd like press a button, and it would take like a little bit too long to do whatever you wanted it to do, and you weren't sure if it was actually going to do it.
Mm.
And yeah, so it's good to hear that that's all snappier. I will say that over the last 6 months or so, they've been updating the Xbox One X as well, and
Mm.
that UI has gotten a lot snappier as well. I'm sure it's
Mm.
nowhere near as fast as the Series X, but
Mm.
I've been happy with the way that they've kind of rearranged some of the stuff there and just made it more efficient to pop around and get into the things you want to get into much faster than it used to be. Um,
Yeah, a lot of crunching and simplifying of everything, like the
hmm
store, and just squishing the separate interfaces down a bit.
hmm
Yeah, but like I say, you've got an X, and although there's significant shorten it, you boot it up, and you've got the initial screen, the green. They do a little logo, 5 second logo of the chip,
hmm
and then it takes a minute and a half for it to boot up and kick in.
hmm Yeah, if you're doing
Which
from a complete off, yeah.
from yeah, from a complete off with this one, you'll get a logo, 5 second logo, and you're in.
hmm
So you lose about a minute or so of stuff, and it's just little things like that that kind of just make things. It's not a revelation.
hmm
It's just comfortable. It's
Yeah,
nice. It's nice to have.
it's
Um,
a user experience improvement.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, just quality of life
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So, uh, like we said, there isn't a lot of like brand new, shiny new games to talk about, but there
Mm,
are like optimized old games. You were
mm,
talking about you were checking out Forza Horizon, Gears 5. How are
mm.
those in terms of like improvements and stuff like that?
Um, I haven't played the multiplayer on which I understand has been boosted up to 120 FPS and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. I'm not a multiplayer person, but I've played the the campaign side of Gears 5,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels a lot nicer and sharper and kind of more fluid. than it did, because I felt like it chugged a little within the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing a lot more within the campaign with that open world than I feel like the multiplayer is doing,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it does feel a lot, and especially kind of the getting around this of it all, because I don't know, it just feels nicer. It just
Mm-hmm.
honestly it does. It's everything just beamed up. That's nice. I think, and the other one I played was Forza, which looks a little nicer. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't perform any better, but then again, it performed really well anyway. It was one of the best looking games I've seen last generation.
Yeah.
Was that, and it just sparked everything up a little bit. The one thing I have done, which is I bought Watch Dogs Legion,
Right.
which
Oh yeah,
were
that's right. Yeah.
I started to play on old gen, and then I crossed over and played it on the Series X.
Mm.
And that one has really kind of shown me the difference with like the implementation of the ray tracing and stuff like that, the increased reflections,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
and
feel
how
like
they.
that game was kind of coming out here as like a good example of like across the board on a lot of different platforms. Like, what does it look compared to old gen? What does it look compared to new gen? What does it look compared to PC? I know Digital Foundry put out quite a bit of coverage of that for all the technical stuff. But yeah, the so I've been playing that on PC with ray tracing,
Mm,
and I was talking about it when it first came out. This was before the new consoles had launched,
mm,
and
mm,
now you and Derek, who isn't on this one, but he has a PlayStation 5, and we'll be talking about that at some
mm,
point. Can now see that as well. And what do you
mm.
think of that tech? Do you think it's at all living up to kind of the hype, or is it kind of not worth it? What's your
Oh,
thought?
with this one specifically, yes, but then this is a very specific case. Being a game that is set in London, which is notoriously wet a lot
Yeah,
of the time, this is probably one of the best examples there. You're going to see ray tracing everywhere.
yeah,
Um, and it really does make things pop more. Now, from what I understand, is kind of um, the previous generation version doesn't do ray tracing; it does a facsimile of it. So it kind of, if you see like in a window reflection of the other side of the road,
hmm
it's not the reflection of the other side of the road. It's building a familiar of it.
yeah. It's
Um,
not. It's like it's actually re-rendering the other side of the road, just blurry and at a different angle, as opposed to ray tracing,
yeah.
which is doing the reflection in real time. So you'll have things like,
Mm,
more detailed vehicles will go by and more detailed reflection of your own
mm,
character and other, uh, NPCs that are walking down the street. And
mm.
they'll just be more dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, I literally went. So I didn't leave it too long. One day I was playing the because I quite like the game.
Hmm.
One day I was playing the previous generation version, and the next day I got the console. I started again, and the first thing that happened when I booted it up was it was pouring down with rain. It
Hmm.
was absolutely hammering it down, which is very London.
Yeah.
But so I instantly saw the difference.
Yeah.
Um, they give you more opportunities within that world. I feel like when it rained a lot in the previous generation version, they lessened like the puddles and stuff like that. There
Hmm.
was less of them around, obviously, because it's like so it doesn't so glaringly show you that it's kind of it's faking it, as it were.
Hmm.
Here it's just everything is just slick.
Yeah.
So it's just absolutely everywhere, and it just like smacked me in the face. It's like this is different.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
feel
That's
like
yeah. Like I feel like it's a really good example to show off
mm,
right out the gate here. And yeah, like on PC with the ray tracing there, it was
mm,
the real showcase was not necessarily raining, but after it had rained and at night was really phenomenal because this is like cyberpunk London, so like there's neon signs everywhere and uh, you know computer screens right on the side of the street and everything just reflected in it and it just looked really cool.
mm. it's a good city to actually show this as well, because obviously we're a city of two halves in London, where you get a lot of new build shiny facades
Mm-hmm.
right next to something that's about 400 years old
Yeah.
and looks it. So you see everything bouncing off each other pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good example of, if you want to look at how things are going to look as a console player. Obviously, if you come from PC, it's like, yeah, big whoop, we've had this all along. But for somebody that's predominantly console,
Well, no,
I would
actually.
say,
So ray tracing on
oh,
PC is pretty new. It's only been around for the last, well, I guess, couple years at the most.
oh
Um,
really?
yeah, so it wasn't. It is fairly new there too, uh,
Mm,
and it's always been. And since it was first implemented into the graphics cards, it's always been kind of a resource hog. So a
mm,
lot of times you chose to not turn it on. Like
mm,
Control was probably one of the first games that had, it's like kind of like, this is a ray tracing game that takes advantage of it, and when you turn it on all the way, it completely destroys your frame rate. Um,
mhm,
so I played through that game with like ray tracing on, like on the low or medium setting, to
mm,
to keep the frames up. But even then, it was still really cool to see, like, you come around a corner, and with that game, it was all in a office complex. So you
mm,
come around the corner and you just see your real time, like, perfect reflection in a pane of glass, like an office building or something like that would have. And
mm.
it's just really cool. Um, so yeah, I'm interested to see new how developers take advantage of it, and in more than just like a bells and whistles kind of way, but actually, like, is this going to be something that they can, now that everything supports it, is it going to be something they can actually implement into gameplay or something like that? Um,
Mm. It's going to take a while to see stuff come through, because you've just been talking about Control. That's the one I originally wanted to test it out on. So I got the special super duper. This is the upgrade version,
yeah,
and it's been postponed till next year. So now I've got a disc that literally doesn't work.
yeah,
But that's another story entirely. But that's the one game I wanted to see, because it ran so notoriously bad
yeah. I hope that,
on the last generation.
they get that running well. Um,
Yeah.
so like
See,
even with these previously out games on other consoles, are
mm.
do they take advantage of the fast loading times as well?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Um, I noticed most on Watch Dogs, because obviously you're constantly fast traveling, you're constantly doing this swapping between characters.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, with Gears, and
Forza.
Forza,
Yeah.
It's all continuous, so I can't really see how much it affects it, because
Sure. Yeah.
it seamlessly goes from one era to the other.
Yeah.
So it's good to get in and out of menus and stuff like that, but I can't see how quickly they load. But if the difference between me going from area to area and station to station in Watch Dogs is anything to go by, it is a massive improvement. It
Yeah.
is very quick.
That's good. Of
Yeah.
course, not a whole lot of it inside that console. Uh, Even less of it inside the PlayStation 5. We'll talk about that, like when we talk about the PS5. But have you had any technical problems at all? Like have you tried out the quick resume, where you have a game in, like, in the background, and then you go play a different game and then go back to the previous game?
Yeah, yeah, that's not called to be a hitch. I don't do it much because that's not how I play games, but I did it just to literally test it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done it a few times. The amount I'm going to use it for, it's been fine.
Mm-hmm.
If you're consistently doing it, I don't know how many games it works for. Is it just the two, or
Apparently at one point I heard up to 5. And then at another point I heard it's unlimited. It'll just keep doing it until it reaches a point where then it closes the oldest game. Um,
I can't believe there's more than 5 games on their system, to be honest with you.
well,
Not with
yeah,
the memory there is.
there probably isn't a whole lot of games that support it right now, but
No.
that's what I hear anyway.
Yeah.
So the Xbox One X had that as well, and if you use the not the full power off mode, but the like sleep mode,
Mm.
with that console, you'd even be able to turn the console off and then back on, and then pick up your game where you left off.
Mm.
Which is what this is supposed to do too. You're supposed to be able to just pick up the game where you left off, after you turn it
Mm.
off.
Oh yeah, I've done that before. Resume from startup. Yeah,
Yeah,
that works seamlessly
uh,
as well. That works just as well.
yeah. So
Yeah.
on the One X, it was useful because the loading times to get into a game were a whole lot more, were a whole lot longer. But
Mm.
that was kind of the only way that I probably got through Red Dead Redemption 2 because of how fucking long that game takes to load into just the single player campaign.
Mm.
And you know, that was the main game that I was playing at the time, so it was really nice to be able to, you know, play the game and then, you know, go to the home screen and then watch Netflix or something like that, and then go back
Mm.
to the game without having to load all the way into the game again. And the same thing with like turning the console off and then picking it
Yeah.
up the next day. You didn't have to go through that whole load as long as that was the only game you were playing.
Mm.
You know, that console only did it for one game, so once you launched another game, it closed the old one. But
I haven't played Red Dead 2 on that yet, but I have seen run-throughs of it on Digital Foundry, and it's like at very least halved those load times.
yeah,
So that's pretty strong
yeah,
because they were a drag. They
yeah.
were a real drag.
Yeah, they were that initial load time, and it was one of those loads that like they kept fading in those pictures, and every one seemed like it was going to be the last one, and then it would just be another one. You'd be like, oh, oh, here it is. Oh, yeah. Well,
Tease.
yeah. So, yeah. So I guess you'll have to keep us updated on what you think of it in terms of you know, if you run into any issues or if it like more as more games come out and stuff. I imagine Cyberpunk is probably going to be your big next one.
Yeah, well, there's also, I believe, in December, the Remedy are doing the single player component of the Crossfire game.
Oh right, okay.
So so there's that shooter that's coming in December. So that'll be a good one to look for, which is, I believe, PC and Xbox only.
Okay.
So that'll be an interesting one to look at to see where it stands on its own 2 feet, as it were.
Yeah.
As obviously they're the same thing. But yeah, so that's a
Yeah, the ray
uh,
tracing with Cyberpunk is probably going to be another one, just like Watch Dogs, with all the
mm,
neon and the wet streets and stuff like that. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to add? I know it's mostly been in terms of like huge changes. There isn't really a whole lot with the Xbox. It's kind of the same interface as it was on the One X and everything.
Yeah. It's the same with what you know. I do like the slightly updated controller.
Oh right, yeah,
It's not on the level of the DualSense, obviously, but everything's just a little tighter.
hmm
There's a little more grip on everything. Triggers now have a slight dapple on them, so you're not as slidey as the old ones.
yeah. The old ones were
Um,
just like real slick.
yeah,
Yeah.
now you've got a nice little kind of not too much grip, not painful grip, but yeah, it's good enough.
hmm
Um, the big the sticks are tighter, but the big thing is one is the share button, which is a straight bop in the middle,
Yeah.
but the D-pad is massively improved.
Yeah.
It's now nice and
How's
clicky.
that dish? It's like a bowl, right?
No. Now it's a bowl on the Elite, isn't it? Because it's just a little thing that rises above it. This is set in to the console, so it's not really a bowl, but you do get a nice eight-way click
hmm
as opposed to just a crossbar thing. It's good, especially for stuff like maybe your kind of your 2D games that
Hmm.
support the D-pad.
Yeah, I
It's a lot
imagine it would
nicer
be
than it
good
was.
for fighting games as well.
Yeah, it's a nice little pad, that one.
All right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
that's really good, mate.
interested to pick one up at some point because that's backwards compatible too, so that can work on an Xbox One X as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I do believe that the share button works as well still.
okay, nice.
So that will work for the old system as well.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, it's nice to just be able to grab those clips of those screenshots without having to hit the guide button and then hit another button.
yeah, just a straight in.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the Xbox Series X. That's the that's the $500 one, or what is it over there in England land?
499 for England
499.
land.
Oh,
Four
so it's
four
the same. Okay.
449. No, 449.
Oh, 4 4. Yeah. Okay. What is
Yeah,
it? Pounds? Is that what it is?
yeah, yeah.
Is that is that how much it weighs? Pretty much.
You know what? It's not as heavy as I thought it would be. It's no heavier than the VCR Xbox One.
Okay.
That was a beast. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not actually as heavy as you like to think it is, and it's smaller than you expect as well.
Yeah.
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 So
We'll talk about the PlayStation 5 later.
Jesus, the monolith.
Yeah. Um, all right. Cool. Yeah. I don't know. We probably not gonna have anything right away on the Xbox Series S, but maybe I'm like I kind of want one. I just want one to see what it's like, as like a curiosity. Um,
It's one of those things. It's like a kind of a spare room console, isn't it?
yeah,
As it were. So
yeah,
that'll do. That'll do for the corner. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a low risk proposition. So
yeah. It's like the crappy controller you give to your brother.
yeah,
Here, Jimmy. You use the Xbox Series S, and I'll use the Xbox Series X.
you use the wired one. You use the one that's see through.
Yeah,
I'll use the proper controller.
yeah. All right. Yeah, so stay tuned for a little bit more on that as more games come out and we get more impressions, and we will be doing a similar discussion about the PlayStation 5 as well with Derek, because he was able to pick one of those up. So stay tuned for that as well. Thanks, Leigh.
That's right.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to see more. Check out voxelvoice.com for all of our great content, and consider supporting us on Patreon to keep our content ad-free and independent.